Good morning to our viewers in America, and good afternoon to our friends in Europe. I'm here this morning, this afternoon, we're in Israel right now, with Jesse Bogner. Jesse is the author of The Egotist, which has been translated into 3 languages. He's also a regular blogger on Huffington Post and the Jerusalem Post. And of course, as always, I'm here with Dr. Michael Laitman. Dr. Laitman is a professor of ontology and the theory of knowledge. He has PhDs in both philosophy and Kabbalah, an MS in medical biocybernology. He is the founder and leader of the largest Kabbalist organization in the world, B'nai Baruch. He's been described by world leaders such as Irina Bokova, who's the General Secretary of UNESCO and a leading candidate to be General Secretary of the United Nations, as a world leader and thinker. This morning we're trying to make sense of what seems to be a weekly scenario, that every single week there's another horrible thing that happens in America. It's not just America, but throughout the world. But this was particularly shocking. Earlier this week, there were 2 police shootings in America of Afro-Americans, one in Minneapolis, the other one in Louisiana, both of which are under investigation. The one in Minnesota was particularly shocking. A man was pulled over for a traffic ticket with his wife and child and shot by the police. The situation in Louisiana is a little more murky, but in any case, there was a protest, actually a coordinated protest across the country by an organization known as Black Lives Matters. Black Lives Matters was holding peaceful protests, and that protest was ambushed by a group of, we believe, 7 gunmen. The circumstances and the facts are still a bit murky, who attacked the police who were defending the marchers as they were walking. And one of the suspects, who later killed himself, said that their goal was to kill white people, and specifically white police officers. So this whole cycle of hate is continuing in America. It's not just about this, but what's your general impression, Dr. Laitman, of what the incident that happened today?
I see it on the background of what is happening in general in the world. People are very agitated. They're restless. They have no patience. They can't listen to each other. They can't communicate. They can't speak to one another. It has to do with heads of states who don't know how to manage, how to control the world. The world is going out of control, and even ordinary people. We can see it happening everywhere. Our ego is growing more and more and more, and we are less and less tolerant. That's obvious. What's not clear to us is, that we, who are intelligent beings, supposedly, we understand that if we want to educate our kids to see them grow up well, we have to put into it time and money, a place where we can give them education, whether it's kindergartens and so forth. It's not just about giving a person knowledge. It's about educating, turning a person into a human being so people know how to relate to each other, how to communicate with one another, understand one another, make some concessions and reciprocal concessions. We always have to be in some kind of communication with one another. We have no choice. We can't be alone. And connecting to one another means you give up some, and the other gives up some, and we meet somewhere in the middle. But we're not teaching people how to be this way. I remember this war and segregation that took place in the 1930s. Well, I was young at the time. In 1963, I remember I went into university. And at that time, there were also riots, and there was a whole war there in Italy, clashes. It was a big deal all over the world. What's happening.
Well, it is a big deal, and what you're talking about are very lofty goals. But right now, as you said, the world is out of control. There's no leadership. People are getting very angry from a very visceral point, very internal point. You know,
Yeah.
what can we do short term to sort of bring down this tension that is exploding all over the world on many, many different levels?
I don't know. We've wasted so much time. When this whole thing of that the European Union started, when they wanted to connect in this way, I saw it, and I at the time I traveled in Europe in many places, and I saw that the whole direction was about unity of banks, of governments, of laws, but not about uniting people. And then I said, no way. This is not going to end well. I just hope it doesn't end in the Third World War, because the First and Second World Wars also took place primarily in Europe. Today, we're beginning to see the end of the European Union. There's no doubt it'll fall apart, because we can't connect people without educating them toward, indoctrinating them toward connection. And the same thing applies to America. We've almost run through the end of the second term of Obama. He himself is an Afro-American. He understands it from personal experience. Who better than him would like, perhaps, or presumably, to put some order into things? Why didn't he do it? 8 years just wasted away. Just like he wanted to create this healthcare program, he should have done the same for education all over America, so people could live with one another. Because Americans are not a people. It's a mass of cultures and nations and peoples, and it's all kind of just boiling up there. Previously, there was this Anglo-Saxon predominance there. But then Afro-Americans came along, the Latinos came along from Latin America, and from all over the world. People immigrated, and people have stopped understanding each other. It's running out of control. Our egos are growing, and you can't blame anyone.
Is it similar to Israel in that way, where it's not a real people, it's a conglomeration of people?
The same applies to Israel. Everywhere. In Israel, it's the same. It's a collection of diasporas. Jews came here, although they're Jews, but from all over the world, from all the cultures, from the Atlas Mountains, from the desert of Yemen, and from Siberia, and from Europe, from Arab countries, and they don't understand one another. Only now they're beginning to understand, but the mentality is still in control. There's still no connection among people here.
What's your take on what happened this morning in Dallas, or last night in Dallas?
I think it's just an anger that's been brewing in America since the abolition of slavery, that the black Americans are kind of fed up with this institutionalized racism, that police forces, especially, I recently saw a documentary that said that police forces in Los Angeles had huge influence from white supremacist groups since the 1930s, and that they're as good as things appear to get better for African Americans with Obama being president, that nothing fundamentally changes, that there's this portion of American society that is forgotten, has no hope, and they really don't have any solutions, and they're kind of feeling this egoistic culture that's kind of overtaking them, and they don't really know what to do except react with violence.
Well, that's a very good theme, that people don't have hope. People are losing hope. Dr. Laitman alluded to education as being an answer, but you have people...
I think that Obama, too, didn't take care of this. His concern was about bringing into the United States supporters of the Islam. He didn't take care of Afro-Americans. I'm really surprised that he kind of just passed it up as if everything's fine. All his concerns were only about Muslims, both in the Middle East, and admitting as many of them as possible into the U.S. This is what we're seeing.
That's not true. He let in 10,000 highly controlled
No,
immigrants. It's not anything.
He changed
compared to
actually.
Europe.
He actually changed the whole dynamic of the way immigration comes in America. Where immigration used to favor Europeans, now it favors non-Europeans. So we were talking about 10,000 immigrants from a war, but that doesn't, include all of the other third world countries that had some of which are Islam, some of which are not, that were included there. But that's not where I was trying to head.
No, but I think, why did I say this? Because there was more emphasis on this than on balancing the relations between whites and Afro-Americans in the U.S. There was no concern for this. Hispanics too. Well, Hispanics is different. They're not that outstanding. They weren't born there. They're not so kind of standing out. But I think that the relationships between whites and Afro-Americans were a lot better 10 or 20 years ago. The tension is growing.
Living in America at that time, I remember after 9/11, we felt that everybody was on an equal footing, that it was a time where everybody pulled together, black, white, Hispanic. It really didn't matter where you were from or what you did. I read an interesting article recently in the New Yorker that talked about entitlements. So you have a class of people that are going to very good schools, getting very expensive educations that they're forced to borrow for. And if they borrow and they default on their loans, they can't go bankrupt. That's another story. These people go to good universities, get great degrees, and then can't get a job. And I think that this system where people are being raised has caused a lot of frustration because people have expectations.
Yeah, it's because you can see that America's not functioning for the sake of the whole. It's only functioning for the sake of the few, that the corporations work in their own interests, and they don't really care about the population or creating a better society, that everyone's protecting their own interests.
But it's a question of government. It's not like you can say that the corporations or that the wealthy should take care of the poor. It doesn't happen anywhere. It's something the government has to do. In the end, in the last 10 years, we've come to a state where people live on $2 a day. How is this possible?
Yeah, I'm saying the corporations are the ones controlling the politicians.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, true.
So is there any, besides long-term goals of education, is there anything that we could do short-term? Is there anything that can be done? Not that we can do, but anything that can be done?
No, I don't think that I have one. There's no other solution. From the level of my science, and also by understanding the general system of nature, I see that if we don't elevate humankind to a new level that it has to come to according to the growing ego, we have to compensate it from the other side. If we don't do that, we are in a very perilous situation. People will become like wolves to one another. And I don't think that education is long-term. It'll take a long time. If we do it correctly through the media, into schools, into kindergartens, universities, if we dedicate some percentage of the budget to this, then what we will get in return will be much better than any other investment. Because people who are educated, indoctrinated, save a lot of money to the state.
As Jesse pointed out, the politicians in the United States, and I think to a certain extent in Europe, are bought and paid for. How could we influence the politicians to change their...
And what's particularly interesting is that even education's becoming private, and it's controlled by the corporate interests. So there's really no emphasis on creating a better society anymore. Like, what should they do in the curriculum to make a better society?
You know, Keynes wrote an article at the same time as Baal Salam, where he talked about the world of our grandchildren. He said that by this time, we will have a GDP, gross domestic product, in every country, most of the civilized world, in order to feed the world 1, 2, 3 times over, and we have that. Still, every day people are hungry. Still in America, where they say there's 5% unemployment, 100 million people are unemployed, and half the country can't put together $500. How does that dynamic change? Yes, education is something that can happen quickly if you have if you have a consensus of people that demand it. You know, how does it? You know, I once asked you how this change would occur, and you said people. You said I'm paraphrasing you. You said at one point it'll be sort of like the Protestant Reformation. People will get very angry and just say they won't take it anymore. So how, without, you know, bringing more pain to the world, can that happen?
I have no answer. Regrettably, no answer. I spoke to representatives of the European Common Market, people who work in Brazil, in Brussels, and they said, you know, you're right, but there's nothing we can do to change it. Nothing. And it's still that way today. And as much as I try to write in the press and everywhere, it's something that has to come from the top, but we don't have any. We don't. Anyone I met in the world, all the top people I met, they all just are helpless where it comes to this. Maybe we have to look for people who are very, very wealthy and very powerful, and through them, perhaps we'll be able to change the national agenda in the US and Europe. So this is taken into account and they actually listen. I'm helpless here.
Aren't they the worst egoists?
Yes, but they need to understand that we are the tendency, that the vector is very negative, and it's going to end in a blast. And no one will gain as a result, not even the elite. They too won't be able to escape this blow.
Yeah, I have a question kind of moving away from the last shooting, but the shooting in Orlando, and kind of a pattern of shootings is that there's a huge radicalized Islamic population. What do you think the cause of that is, and what do you think we can do to defend ourselves against that as Americans?
Against radical Islam, you won't be able to protect yourselves. I'm certain of it. I spoke about it 15, 20 years ago when the invasion started into Europe. I remember when it started going into England in the 1960s. And even then, I said, that's not the way to do it. But that was different. It was from moderate Arab countries. It was from India. And they somehow got acculturated there. But the refugees who are coming now, they're not refugees. Look at how they're coming. They're very well off, actually.
Why do you think Islam has become so much more radical in certain sectors?
Well, that's a big question. It has nothing to do with Europe or America. But in short, we can say this. Radical Islam that we see now is not the real Islam. It's its radical section. It says that they have to conquer the whole world. The whole world, the whole planet should be green, the color of the Muhammad flag. That's why they're invading everywhere. Previously it was Europe. They succeeded big time. And now, while this very close to their hearts president was there, whose entire family is Muslim, he opened the doors for them. So now you have in America tons of people who are Muslims, which he now wants to make them citizens. And this way, gradually, as usual, as it happened in Europe, the same will happen in America.
As a Kabbalist, what advice do you offer people that are scared? Because a lot of people are scared now.
Only if people can bow before the state, before the laws of the state, can they live in it and become citizens. There's no way a person can come there and demand what he wants and what he's used to. There's no such thing. It has to be a precondition for anyone who comes into the borders of any country. That's the way it is. So first, they have to learn outside of Europe and outside of America. They have to study all the laws and assume the mentality and the education and agree to behave and conduct themselves the way it's acceptable in the host countries and not force their own customs on the locals.
The question was a little bit broader. You know, you have all these incidents every single day. In America, it's one a week. In Europe, it's one a week. In the Mideast, it's one a week. Or more than one a week in the Mideast. Like, for example, this week, the bombing at the Turkish airport, the suicide bombings in Iraq, the killings in Lebanon. I can go on and on and on. People are feeling all these events in a very internal way.
That's the modern war. I think that's the style of the modern war, because in contemporary war, you can't use other types of weapons. So this is what happens. It's like, in this way, everyone understands that it's like, by this, we're kind of venting out pressure.
Yeah, I kind of see like there are two things happening because of these events. And there's one side that kind of ignores it and wants to accept Islam as any other religion. And then there's a far-right movement in America that's banding together and uniting in their hatred. Is there one way to go in the situation that's preferable?
I think that the way that Europe is receiving the immigrants comes to them from the top, from the elite. It's not just like that thousands and thousands of people come into Europe well-dressed, modern smartphones. You know, they don't look like refugees. They don't like people running away from war. They don't look like hungry people. They're not starved in any way. They look like an army, Men, women, children. They are marching to conquer Europe. And I think that the European governments have some sort of a plan that's allowing them to behave specifically as they are. Otherwise, you can't explain it. What is this? When 1,000 people come into my borders and I don't know what to do. So what? I just put an army up there and I don't let them in. If you want to come into my house, when I shut the door, the same goes for countries. I've never seen it. I've never seen the Europeans so generous, so warm-hearted. They're crying. What's happening to them? To me, it seems like it's a plan from a very high level, coming right down from the top. It's just being executed from the very top.
You see in Sweden, the majority of the people support the refugees coming in. The government's actually stopped it. But what's interesting is the people who are begging for money aren't from the Islamic countries. They're Romanians, they're like the Eastern Europeans, that the Muslims actually are going there to work and living a relatively high quality of life. It's kind of an odd phenomenon. It's not what you would expect, but they're living completely separate, like living in different neighborhoods by separate rules.
I think that's the point Dr. Laitman was making, earlier, that when our great-grandparents or grandparents came to America, they integrated with society. They didn't have any choice. You learned English. Yeah. You went to school. You got a profession. You spoke English at home. It was the way it is. You had to integrate, or you didn't make it in society. This whole theory that it's okay to have more than one national language. You told me that in Sweden, that the majority of Sweden will be non-Swedish demographically by, what'd you say, 2020?
I don't know the exact demographics, but 1 in 4 people in Sweden are Muslim.
Yes.
And Sweden's just one example. But I go back to the question that, we saw in the Brexit vote that people told pollsters one thing and then they voted with their hearts. It was sort of like they say one thing on the outside, they say something else on the inside. From my talking to people all over the world, I find that people right now are just scared. And because, as you said, there's no leadership. There doesn't seem to be any answers. If you talk to them about unity or education, they'll go, yeah. What do you say? Do you try to calm them down, or do you just say, listen, you're in a messed up situation?
It's a transition period. It's a period of transition. This is what I see. The world doesn't know what to do, on the one hand. On the other hand, it still can't listen to the right, good advice. And besides, I'm serious, I see a plan here, a program from the very top, both with respect to the US and to Europe, that by taking in, without any limitations, the immigrants, because 10 years from now, you won't be able to live because of the heat wave that's coming to this area where all the Arab countries are now. So they'll all go up north to Europe, to Russia, even to Siberia.
So while you're in this transition period, I've had like a sense of deja vu. I remember during the financial crisis, I kept asking you a question. I said, what do you tell the guy who's unemployed, who doesn't have food to feed his kids? And finally you told me, tell him to study Kabbalah and things will start to get better for him. So what do you tell these people that are scared, that can't control the world, can't control the events around them, that feel helpless, that feel insecure? Study Kabbalah?
Yep. They're still not listening, but I would say the same thing. But not just studying the wisdom of Kabbalah. Really, it's a method of connecting people, and this is what's missing. Through the right connection between us, we influence both human society and the environment, nature, the still vegetative and animate levels in our world. Through our balanced relationships, we can balance the whole of nature that's below us. That's our only weapon and the right solution. To come to the right kind of connection between us. To really be closer, more considerate. And the wisdom of Kabbalah explains how to do this. Unequivocally, we are controlled by the evil inclination, meaning our egos, which are burning in us, and we have to know how we find within nature a positive force to compensate for the negative force that's controlling us. And when these two forces are in balance, we'll come to the complete state. And then the world will be beautiful, and so will humanity, and we'll get to it for sure. But let's hope it doesn't happen in a difficult way.
Yeah, people don't want to connect with each other. They want to buy guns.
Yeah,
For the time being,
yeah, every time something like what happened in Dallas happens, the gun sales spike. It's
governments can force the media and everything that influences us. They can force them to influence us into the right method, the method of connection. We can do this. If I feed millions of people in the U.S. by all kinds of state-funded programs, then I can say, you'll get food from me or whatever other benefits from the state on condition that you come every day to study in some place. You sit and learn and you discuss and you assume this method of right citizenship and right relationships and human psychology, men, women, children, family. When we learn something about ourselves and don't come from the backyard where you have drugs and violence.
a little over time, but I wanted to touch upon this as well. We talked about the governments, and it seems to me that the governments have lost their credibility as well, that there's a certain innate corruption.
Yes.
We touched upon it before, that in
No
America,
one trusts the government.
no one trusts the government. There's this anger. The Supreme Court has let corporations donate as much as they want to various political causes. In the UK, every leader is quitting. It's just and there's no leadership anywhere. And then you have this whole European Commission issue that are totally unelected. That everybody on the continent is united in one thing: everyone hates the European Commission. So you have governments that are either corrupt or on the verge of corrupt or corrupt just by the nature of the way they're set up. So, the government tells you to do one thing, it's against your interest, it's against the interest of the whole. How does somebody react to that in these days and times? They're creating laws that are against our civil liberties or what we perceive to be our civil liberties. How does a human being react to that?
Our egos, which are grown from generation to generation, cannot bring us into any other situation. It's written about it, the face of the generation is the face of a dog, that it will be like that and it'll be even worse unless we introduce the right kind of education. Only educating people, there is no other solution. You have bad people, educate them into being good. You have one opposite the other. You can't do anything else. Don't think it's difficult. It's not. You've never educated children. You've never educated people because we gave them information. What did they learn at school? Physics, math, languages. They didn't learn how to be people. Why do we have to communicate this way? Why are we mean to each other? How can we be good? How do we guarantee our good future? No one's learning it anywhere. That's what I'm saying. That the problem is within us. So you need to educate people. You have no other choice.
I also feel that there's a meanness, it's not anger. It's a lack of consideration,
Patience,
consideration for other people.
Okay.
It's a very
Yes.
It's the way you were brought up and I was brought up and Jesse was brought up. You didn't have this feeling of meanness.
Yeah, I saw a doctor propose that he thinks that the main cause of this shooting is that the police are so anxious right now, that there's so much anxiety.
You're talking about the shooting that caused
the shooting that caused the
protests that caused the other shooting,
where the cop killed an innocent African-American man when he was just reaching for his wallet, which has happened throughout history in America. That people aren't properly trained to cope with their anxiety. They just feel so much pressure.
They don't have mutual understanding. They don't feel one another. They have no proximity. They're far, and they're on a collision course, and they're opposite from one another. So of course it's going to happen, and it's going to happen more and more. That's why I'm saying that 8 years instead of fighting for the health care, the president should have gone for the educational program.
Well, you're right, but I'm thinking about the person that's watching us on Facebook right now, or is maybe going to watch a recording of this in a couple of days, and is saying, what can I do? What can that person who's sitting at home, checking the boxes, communicating with their friends, and, is dealing with this anxiety, as Jesse said, what is this, what can the single person do?
There is no solution other than changing man. And you can change man only through education. And there is an educational program, and it is called the Wisdom of Kabbalah. They can just come in and see what's written about how to educate people. It's written very clearly. I have no other solutions.
Online for free.
No, of course. Good luck to you, and thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Jesse and Dr. Laitman.
Thank you.